I'm hearing from truck drivers they see less and less trucks filling up at the warehouses and truck stops. Less loads, less trucks, less deliveries. Sure, we've probably got a stocked pantry, probably enough to last a week, but I don't know, guys. I just can't shake the feeling of being left behind. Y'all know what I mean? The American people, we are just getting squeezed from all sides, and news like this definitely isn't helping.
Some Wells Fargo customers say their direct deposits have disappeared from their bank accounts. The customers taking to social media for the past couple of days to report the issue. A bank spokesperson says a limited number of those customers were unable to see their deposits on their accounts and that the vast majority have been resolved. The spokesperson said the few remaining issues will soon be resolved. An exact timetable or how widespread the problem is unclear.
So guys, have you checked your bank accounts lately? So I found this one story online. One woman was planning to move into her apartment. She deposited a check into her Wells Fargo account and everything. But when the morning rolled around and she went to check her account, she found that not only was the deposit missing, but that her entire balance had been overdrawn by hundreds of dollars. Now you can imagine how panicked she was, just totally freaking out. She ended up having to borrow $500 from a friend just to get the funds necessary to secure her new keys. And this isn't the first time that this has happened. For the second time this year, Wells Fargo acknowledged that deposits were not showing up in customers' accounts. A Wells Fargo representative said that the issue was affecting a limited number of customers and that the vast majority of instances have been resolved before noon, while the few that were remaining would be resolved soon. But what do you guys think about this? Like, would you trust Wells Fargo with your money like this? Now, the last time that this happened, it wasn't too long ago either. It was just in March, as a matter of fact. The company blamed that one on an unspecified technical issue. But this time, the Wells Fargo representative declined to comment further about what actually caused this week's incident. Nor did they specify whether it was related to the March incident, nor exactly how many customers were actually affected by this thing. Plus, phony bank accounts have resurfaced at Wells Fargo. The bank had paid billions in fines and has cycled through 2 CEOs since the issue was first reported back in 2011. But this time, the issue was blamed on third-party fraudsters. But really, customers nationwide appear to be affected by this week's outage. So one story, a single disabled self-employed accountant and Alaska resident, she said that she was supposed to have paid her rent, her gas, her electric, and internet payments for the month. But a Wells Fargo representative said that she would not be able to access her deposit for another 3, maybe 5 business days. They said Wells Fargo was going to be sending her a letter to give to her creditors. But guess what? That too has not arrived. Now, another story here, a Texas resident and a father of 2 who was laid off less than 2 weeks ago. The same guy was affected by the March outage, so he's now looking to move his money to a local bank. Yeah, definitely some shady stuff happening here. Now, according to their latest release, the Wells Fargo glitch is over, but if it does happen to you, here's what you can do. You should contact your bank directly. That way, clients flag the issue to customer service. Those who do get the help they need the soonest, be it by phone, social media, or any other method available. For those with a linked savings account at Wells Fargo, you could try transferring money from that account to cover any kind of payments in the short term. And when that money does come back to your account, just make sure you're proactive about pursuing refunds for any kind of overdraft fees that might have been incurred. Just don't automatically assume that it's going to happen. And if problems with your account don't get resolved, you can also elevate the issue outside of Wells Fargo, like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau or your state banking regulator. Now, of course, it always helps if you keep tabs on your money. Overall, keeping a bank record of transactions is always a good idea. Getting a physical receipt whenever depositing a check at an ATM or taking a screenshot of the confirmation after depositing a check through a mobile application, that can definitely help you to keep track of your money. But if something does go wrong with your checking account, don't worry if you don't have those records. The law doesn't require that you have the original paper check to resolve the issue with your bank. In general, it's just good practice to keep regular tabs on your bank accounts and your money, whether it's protecting against identity theft, making sure you don't overdraw your account, or making sure that the money that was supposed to be in there got in there. I mean, am I right, guys? It's also a very good idea to stay updated on the latest financial news and opportunities. I mean, that's why you're here, right? And that is also why I definitely recommend subscribing to our channel and joining our financial freedom fam. Almost 500,000 strong, guys. Can you believe it? I just want to thank you guys so much for the support. Appreciate you guys lighting up the like button. And anyway, I just really appreciate y'all. So banks are definitely going to be looking for ways to squeeze that extra dollar out of us. I mean, check this out. Wall Street giants expect $8.9 billion in hits from bank failures. Guys, the biggest U.S. lenders expect to pay almost $8.9 billion to to help replenish the U.S. government's bedrock deposit insurance fund after it was tapped into to backstop uninsured depositors at Silicon Valley Bank and over at Signature Bank. Citigroup is expecting to contribute as much as $1.5 billion to the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation's pot that was depleted to protect deposits at the two failed lenders, making it the last of the country's biggest banks to disclose their set-asides. In total, the 6 largest lenders forecast covering 56% of the $15.8 billion that it cost the FDIC to protect uninsured depositors. JP Morgan Chase & Company, they're expecting to pay the largest fee at approximately $3 billion. Meanwhile, Bank of America and Wells Fargo, they're each going to be paying almost $2 billion. The Deposit Insurance Fund typically only covers $250,000 in an individual bank account. But after Silicon Valley Bank and Signature collapsed in March, the FDIC, the Federal Reserve, and the Treasury Department, they said that there's a potential threat to the financial security system, so they announced systemic risk exceptions for the two banks. In short, bank bailouts for those giants. That meant all depositors at the institutions would be made whole to prevent further destabilization. The fund had more than $128 billion in it at the beginning of the year, a pot that shrank with each bank failure. Now, it's usually filled and refilled by all the insured banks kicking in quarterly fees known as assessments. But when the government decided to cover uninsured deposits as well, it said that any losses to the fund would be recovered by a special assessment on banks as required by law. But you just know that those fees will eventually trickle back down to the customers. Am I right, guys? I'm talking about me and you here. And as it stands, big banks are on the hook. The agency said institutions with more than $50 billion in assets would pay 95% of the fees, and those with less than $5 billion, they wouldn't have to pay at all. So a week and a half before the proposal was released, First Republic Bank also failed, making an additional $13 billion dent in the deposit insurance fund. But there won't be a separate special assessment levied for First Republic because the bank was quickly purchased by JP Morgan, so they didn't really need to go through that systemic risk exception fuss all over again. But hey, watch out guys, JP Morgan Chase is just eating up all these smaller banks. You guys see the pattern here, right? Sooner or later, they're just gonna have bank consolidation, and that's not such a good idea for competition and ultimately the US consumer. And you know those further Fed rate hikes, they're not gonna be making things any easier for banks as lenders. Governor Michelle Bowman from the US Federal Reserve, she just gave us the lowdown on what's really going on with these interest rates. So basically she's saying that we might need to hike those interest rates some more to put the brakes on inflation. In a talk that she had with the Kansas Bankers Association, she gave a thumbs up to the Federal Reserve's recent bump in their rates. Her reasoning? Well, there's still high inflation, strong consumer spending, a rebound in the housing market, and a labor market that is helping to feed higher prices. But the real headline here is that Bowman's not stopping there. She's thinking we might need more of these rate hikes in the future. For her, and probably a lot of other Fed officials, it's all about that 2% inflation target that they may drive us straight into a recession just to get there. Matter of fact, others are thinking that we'd end the year with interest rates at 5.6%. But Bowman's hinting that we may need to push it even higher. All the while, looking for signs of slowing in consumer spending and signs that the labor market conditions are loosening. By the way, if you own a home, make sure your home is protected today. Get your free home warranty quote. There's a link in the description down below. Now, the Labor Department's monthly job report, it showed hiring slowed down in June, but unemployment at 3.5%, it remains pretty slow. And Bowman also noted that there were many more available jobs than there were workers to fill those jobs. Banks also continue to increase lending to households and to businesses, though it is at a slower pace than when interest rates were lower. And for them, there hasn't really been any kind of sharp contraction of credit since the banking turmoil in March. But come on, isn't it just kind of minimizing the gravity of what happened? Two big banks, SVB and Signature. Oh, and of course, First Republic, they all went down the toilet. And they say that there hasn't been any kind of sharp contraction of credit. It's like the whole there's no recession because we changed the meaning of a recession shtick all over again, right? Am I right, guys? Now, globally, we're already seeing a demand slump dragging global manufacturing of financial crisis levels. This as China's economy is starting to struggle and consumer spending shifts more toward travel and services. But really, the outlook for the global economy will depend on whether the service sector can support employment on its own. Supply lines have started to get back to normal, but a shortage of demand has kept manufacturers from taking full advantage of these unsnarled supply lines. Containment shipment volume from Asia to the United States has slumped by around 20 to 30% in 1 year right here in 2023. And so basically retail inventories still aren't getting cleared out, and the demand isn't strong enough for companies to ramp up production and ship more products. So you know how during the pandemic, everybody was stuck at home and ended up buying a ton of stuff online, right? Well, now that things are getting better with C-19, people are changing up their spending habits. And so instead of buying up a bunch of things, they're now into spending money on services like travel. Another part of this shift is maybe because central banks in developed countries like the United States, they're starting to tighten up the money flow. When the pandemic hit, these banks pumped out a lot of money into the economy, which made asset prices go way up. That led to people buying more stuff than usual. But then these banks decided to start raising interest rates to slow things down. They caused some financial issues and made it harder for people to get loans, which in turn made them less likely to spend money on goods. The slump in demand for physical goods is definitely hitting manufacturers worldwide. Right here in our own backyard, the U.S. manufacturing PMI from the U.S.-based Institute for Supply Management, it improved slightly in July to 46.4, but it still stayed below 50 for a 9th straight month, the longest such streak since the recession sparked by the 2008 financial crisis. Plus, you got all these supposedly modern but sounds kind of shady options out there. Went to the market, was shocked to see the bioengineered ingredients in the small letters on my favorite pizzas. I buy mostly organic, but there are a couple of items out there that I don't. This falls into that. Thankfully, they had an organic one, so I picked that one up instead. And although everything in my cart is now organic, I read all the labels before checkout just to be sure. Y'all know what I mean, right? By the way, if you made it this far in the video, be sure to drop a like for the video. Also consider subscribing to the channel, and I'm gonna see you guys on the next one.